Welcome to How Hard Can It Be, the podcast where we explore AI one question at a time.
Hey, welcome back to How Hard Can It Be, the show where we explore AI one question at a time. Today's guest is Xiaochen Zhang, founder and CEO of FinTech4Good. He leads a global network promoting socially responsible fintech and actively contributes to the forward-looking AI 2030 initiative. With a strong focus and foundation from Virginia Tech and a passion for ethical innovation, Xiaochen brings valuable insight into how AI and finance can advance inclusively and how agentic systems can be applied responsibly in enterprise environments. So welcome to the show, Xiaochen.
Thank you. Great to have this conversation. I really like the title of the show, and that's exactly how we should be doing AI.
Much appreciated. So, hey, let's dive right in. You've built FinTech4Good into a global movement. So, what are the core values and experiences that convinced you that this kind of open, ethical ecosystem was necessary in finance?
Yeah, and so the goal of that is, as what you mentioned, is really to create the global movement, and where that we try to just really looking at some of the gaps existing, where that's we are able to address, because there are a lot of other gaps. Others are much better positioned. So what we focus on is to look at the awareness, the talent, and also the tooling side. So from the awareness side, that's how to bring people together. If people think that this is not important, or they don't know how to do, what to do, and who they should learn from, then we should just bring that best practice and communicate the importance, and then having many leaders who using the same vocabulary to really communicate together with us. Then from the talent side, that's if we want the technology to be responsible, naturally the people who behind the technology need to just have that foundation. If an engineer want to build responsibly, but really don't have any social science or humanity or ethics related background or knowledge, how hard he or she can try, but the result may not be that's ethical or that's responsible. So that how can we just empower the next generation of builders who are able to just build responsibly, and then there that's we try to create our own content and also bring others' content together to just really empower builders to becoming responsible builders. The third part is really around the solutions. When you translate, any of the responsible side, no matter clean up data, take PI, out of the data set, or just, remove some parameter from a model which you have files, everything will become a solution where that someone need a solution to just, do that. And many times I heard from people, executive builders, that those tools don't exist, or there are too many tools that they don't know which one to use. And after they use one, and then they still are not sure whether the problem are being addressed or not, or new problem being, introduced into the existing problem. So there that's, we try to just really through incubation, acceleration to identify those, technology solutions, and help them to scale. And if you are trying to solve some bigger problem, no matter it's make AI or technology responsible, or to bring the technology to solve bigger problems, social environmental problem, or to just make the access to technology be equitable, and not only certain group, but people of different color, racial background, age, or can just have equal access to technology. If you're working on those solutions, you need to be provided more resources, because if you compare with other commercial solutions, naturally you're in a disadvantaged position, and we want to bring the ecosystem to support them, help them to really have equal chance to be successful.
Right. So can I think of it as, on the one hand, promoting best practices for fintech and upcoming fintech relative to society, for lack of a better term? And, you mentioned things like, fairness and bias. For example, that we treat everybody equally when it comes to a loan application. But does it also include, I remember some years back reading about the introduction of microloans and microfinancing in Africa, for example, because people didn't have access, to a bank or easy access. So they did it with mobile phones and things like that. And they really opened up, new financial instruments to a particular demography. So does it encompass both? How do you
Yeah.
use FinTech in this example to enable access to financial instruments to specific demographies, but at the same time also making sure that these new instruments or tools or digital representations, to your point, treat people equally, fairly, and without bias.
Yeah, and from the financial inclusion component, it's very clear that people are excluded from financial system for different reasons, and some are, we call it as a self exclusion, meaning that they don't trust the existing financial system, and then naturally they still need financial service. And then, if they choose not to, and then there's a reason where, and that is mostly that the problem for innovator will be how you can help them to just really address the trust related issue. Then they are comfortable to just, using financial service. And there that, we can see, for example, blockchain and other emerging technology have already just introducing new business models and the way that they bring, that trust into that and address some of that. The second part is that, some of the folks who are excluded because of they live in a remote areas, and banking system or financial system, it's not financial or commercially viable for them to serve them. And then the problem there is really how to just reducing the cost of a financial product offering to specific, demography. And there that naturally, again, emerging technology provide, we can see in the past mobile phone access or mobile phone enabled, new, and then from the crowdfunding, P2P lending, and all that, have been very important. But of course, that's, to make all those business models to be competitive, now and in the future, and how to leveraging AI and to just reducing costs and make those more commercially viable in even more remote area, and to just have this snowball effect. And the third part is that a lot of time when you introducing emerging technology into problem solving, sometimes you also just create a new digital divide. And a good example, when I worked a lot on central bank digital currency, naturally, if you can think about it, if the whole world is running with CBDC or crypto, and then there's no cash available, and naturally, people who don't have access to a digital device, and then you don't have any way to just participate in any economic activity. So that naturally create a new digital divide, where that's how when you're just introducing digital technology into financial system, how you can continue to provide alternative offline solution, where that's can continue to empower those who don't have, and be active and participate, enjoy financial system. The last part is really around the study that's been done on financial inclusion, where that the most in the past 20, 30 years, the most effective financial inclusion related work are really in the area where that there are existing banking services, which means that any digital solution where that's if you really still need the infrastructure. And without infrastructure, you talk about new solution and all that, that will not be effective. So those are some of the points.
No, I appreciate it. So basically, the emergence of new financial vehicles and tools to address, or to increase financial inclusions, they still have to make money, obviously, at the end of it.
Exactly.
So did I understand you correctly that AI can be a big enabling technology to make these services viable from a cost perspective, for example, whereas 5 years ago, this would not have been possible? Or let me rephrase. Do you think AI is a key enabler to enable new financial vehicles that will benefit individuals that are currently excluded from certain financial instruments?
Yeah, and AI itself is, again, I don't believe that any, single technology is
The magic wand.
panacea, and it's more as a combination of, a number of technologies, and then by the end of the day, it's about the customer problem, right? And where that's to solve that specific problem, and then you need to see that for that solution, what are the key enabling technology, which are a key component of that. And a good example is that, if we talk about, digital financial solution, and a lot of time, we can go back to the cloud. And where that, if you think about if a digital solution, and then at, the edge level, where that's the payment settlement takes a day or a few hours, and no one wants to use that solution, even no matter how cheap and all that. You cannot get your business done. So then, from the infrastructure side, and you need to really just enable that solution, which is the final settlement, clearance, and all that can be done, on spot, real time. So that is really we are looking at the more broader infrastructure. And then you go to the specifics where that, if a lot of the cost to financial products related to fraud detection, related to compliance, and all that, you definitely, without a solution like AI and all that, you bring the, you know, human labor into that, and then to look into this humongous data set that is inefficient, that is not accurate. Of course, then any fraud may just result into large damage to the business that may just, make you bankrupt. How to, definitely bring AI into that. We already see many of very exciting AI-based fraud, related technology, which are empowering many of those financial, FinTech and all that to just be success, continue their success. And of course, that if you're just talking about this transaction time as a way of a barrier in financial transactions, a lot of time that financial system is designed in that way. You need to have all these intermediaries to be in the middle to just make the modern financial infrastructure work. But there is now alternative if you just really run your business or transaction based on crypto, for example, where that the settlement can really be real time, and then there's no double counting. There's the trust related issue can be addressed in a very different way, and then that becoming a blockchain solution. So then you combine all that, say really what problem really prevent you as a vendor to provide service to your customer or your desired, and then you will see that what solution can really empower you.
Right. I think we need a separate podcast, Xiaocheng, for crypto, right? Because crypto is still fighting with its own challenges, account takeover, which you really don't see, in classical banking. But I think it's a great point, and it obviously has a great, at least potential. Let's switch to AI 2030, right? So I assume because we see so much early adoption, and I would almost say experimentation in the financial sector with Gen AI and Agentic AI, I would assume that your passion for AI 2030 is ultimately connected to FinTech4Good. So as the name suggests, AI 2030 tries to look into the near-term future and anticipate future use cases for AI. And again, where a large majority we accept are in the financial sectors. Are there any big surprises as you started this initiative, this engagement? And what should CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, think about from a long-term perspective when it comes to AI risk, AI governance, and how to most effectively and responsibly utilize this new technology?
Yeah, so the linkage between FinTech for Good and AI 2030 is really, both of them is, like a cross-cutting in that sense, right? And, in general, any business, any industry need a, need a payment transaction and then to empower, the business activities. So that's the FinTech side. From AI 2030, and then this is really across different sector. We are looking at whole economy-wide cross-sector related impact. So there, that's definitely I would say the number one surprise to me was that how many people who are, in the AI space care about the responsible side. And before you do it, you never know, because people can talk about, but we are asking for action. And then within two years, and we grow the membership from zero to now over 4,000 some people without any advertisement or anything. It's all word of mouth where that people say, oh, there's this organization care about responsible AI. Then when I just read their application form and how this important issue is important to them, and then what they want to do, and when they are part of AI 2030, what are their plans? That was super encouraging. I say that so many highly successful, capable individuals or high achiever who just really want to spend a lot of their personal time to really dive deep into that, and then to look at the greater good. And I think that itself for me is a positive surprise. And the second part is really around the talent side, where that I see it's very clear that we have been following very before AI, and the whole pat you know um the paradigm in the workforce is being shaped with the IT, modern IT enabled all that. And so that kind of workforce itself, because basically in with AI we use the framing as a human machine collaborative intelligence. And any workforce before this are really human leveraging tool, and then they are the tools. They are not a part of your capability. So those kind of workforce planning will not be effective anymore. And in the past, all the workforce development, like especially for the inclusion related efforts, around tech, give you tech skills, and then you're able to find a tech. And now that all the entry level tech jobs are disappearing, and then what are the future job, and how do you just empower the future of the knowledge worker, and then becoming successful in the human machine collaborative intelligence era. And that is a very new topic, and I have so many conversations with corporate, with universities, with the nonprofit who are taking this as their agenda. And everyone is really at the early stage trying to understand how does that impact my bottom line, and how my stakeholder are being impacted. And I don't have seen any very effective solution yet. So I think that itself for me is a surprise, and also it's not a surprise, but it's really a realization where that this issue need a systematic change, it need a systematic input from different stakeholders. The last part is really around the big surprise to me is this global connectivity. And we probably have seen that at a national level, and AI as a contributing factor for competitiveness. And then when any country want to continue to be the winner in this global competition, take this as national strategy to compete. But when you just look at the like a bottom level, from the like a framework sharing, or learning sharing, innovators, the sharing and all that, it's really globally connected. And then even, facing all the challenge, how, the current international structure looks like, but this flow is still happening. And I think that is, for me, is also a very interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, it makes good sense. Let me double click on your surprise when you mentioned, was surprised how many people care about responsible AI. And it's a theme I often mention in the show where, I'm old enough to have experienced the rise of the internet and social media. And, if I reflect back how long it took us to have regulation in place for cyber and negative incentives, right? If you don't apply a proper cybersecurity posture, GDPR, etc. Is it a fair statement to say, because of our experiences of the past with cyber, with social security, there's a lot of people who don't care now whether there is AI regulation in place or not. They believe it's an imperative to act responsible with AI. So do you expect enterprises to, whether or not there is regulatory pressure in place, to do the right thing because they do understand that AI has significant larger risk and ramifications than social media or the early days of moving into the internet? So in other words, it's maybe a very optimistic thought, but do people have that anticipation and that self-governance of saying, look, whatever the regulation is, this is the right thing to do? Is that one reason why you think you saw such a great flocking to AI 2030 and people picking this up?
Yeah, and again, that's 4,000 is for us is a good number, but it's such a small number when you
Of
look at
course.
the world, right?
Right.
And where that's definitely, I remember there was a study done by University of Maryland and another university. They called Six Americas in the climate change age. Basically, looking at then they just categorized how many people who care about, looking at some are totally against, some are totally for, and then, who are in the middle, then they categorize. And I think in responsible AI, you will see very same thing, which is, from the different spectrum, where that's, you will see for each of that, you have a large group who believe, AI need to be developed responsibly. And you also have a large group who think that, they should be doing everything without any guardrail and all that. And then both of them exist. And then a lot of them also in the middle, trying to just then can be pulled to either side. And when you look at the characteristic of each, definitely in general, larger organization and in the regulated industry who have a strong risk management related skill set and have been traditionally, heavily regulated. Naturally, a lot of them are in this part of the spectrum where that's with or without,
You have the culture there already.
regulation. Yeah, they have to because of, they are, when you look at the AI related regulation, really, looking, a lot as when we discuss that is, we're looking at maybe 5% or 10% of new things. And then the existing 80%, 90% are already there. It's more about, how you comply AI introducing new risk and then how you're managing that with new risk to comply with the existing framework. So there that, they have to do. So then, but for those non-regulated and all that, we have this program called the Responsible AI Pledge. And that's exactly where we know this spectrum and we say, okay, instead of waiting for regulators to, giving you all the clarity, and can you as a corporate start to voluntarily to align yourself? And then we include them the pledge as, say, for example, you pledge to just um, follow a responsible AI framework, no matter it's yours or others, and build an AI governance body. So someone in your organization are watching your AI behavior. And third is that, include a workforce development in your AI strategy, where that's, you don't translate AI strategy into hiring people and without taking care of your own people. And the last is that you report your data to your stakeholders no matter it's your AI incidents or your, upscaling and all that, and your community, your stakeholder understand. So those are fundamental level. And then then we have each vertical, like make and transparent, accountable, fair, safe, secure, sustainable, privacy preserve. And then we have all that. And then you can choose what you want to align, and then you can take those actions. Those are not mandatory, but if you want to, do it responsibly, there are some guidance, and then you can also communicate that result with your stakeholder. We believe that, when you do it responsibly, it doesn't really translate it into, more cost in your, running the business, but rather long-term gain if you just really have a long-term business plan. You want to be a 100-year business rather than a 5-year or
Right.
3-year or 1-year business. Yeah.
So the call to action is go to the AI 2030 webpage and participate in the pledge for responsibly. I like that. I think it's a good call. Xiaocheng, agentic AI, right? The next big thing. I think I read the stat somewhere that 95% of pilots currently fail. So we are, very early day. And we do work with a couple of financial institutions supporting them on safety security for agentic AI. But the use cases we have seen there are still obviously very risk averse, right? They're internal facing. They're starting to replace rather simple processes, or building, very effective research capabilities. How far are we away? First of all, I think we agree that agentic is not there yet, that you would fully expose it to a consumer, have a trading bot make recommendations or automated trades, or maybe even do that, automatic determination of whether you should get a loan or a credit card and things like that. I know this is a bit of looking into the glass ball, but what is your guess? How far are we away that we will see, let's say in FinTech, agents actually being unleashed to the consumer, to the end customer?
Yeah, and I think the technology adoption really are driven by a few factors. And number one is your regulator. Your product can be totally ready, but if your regulator are not ready, and you cannot just introduce your customer-facing, application, all that. So, how soon your regulator can be comfortable to just see this regulator need to really interact with the uh, industry and getting all that informed and all that. That take time. And in different country, you will see very differently. And in some country, regulation in general is much relaxed or even not there. And it's much easier for them to just introduce a new product. But after the product, then the consequence is that they may see a lot more lawsuits, and then the other agency who are not financial regulator need to address that in the court. Most sophisticated financial system like US, like your Europe, and all that, and that really need a lot of this back and forth from regulator and industry, and to get the regulator comfortable. And for example, if you just take an examiner's job, and say examiner who just number one, your model is not explainable, and the examiner cannot go into your model to just understand how you make your decision. When they give you a question list and they say, your model did that, I cannot tell you why. And of course, that's, they will not be comfortable to just, so there's a lot of learning, and then there's technology improvement. That takes a lot of time. The second part is your customer. And the customer adoption, there's always, some early adopter, others, and in agentic AI in general, like the adoption is already, in the speed which we have never seen. How, um, folks or customers are ready to just, adopt agentic AI. But, because we are living, in the US, and then in the advanced economy with all that. But if you just take this in a developing or at least a developing country, and then that adoption will be very different because the customers are not ready. So then it's really which context, and the customer readiness, literacy, and all that is not, that also take time. The third part is really looking at, the company or the industry themselves. And in the industry, there are existing, financial products, and some financial institutions just, we don't need to, if we already have a monopoly position there, we don't need to do anything if others are not disrupting our business. The most comfortable position is that we don't do anything. So then that's, is the one side. The other is, when a lot of, the financial institutions have very strong risk management, approach and all that. And literally, the funny thing is that, I was talking to some financial institutions, and then the compliance person was just, complain to me and say that, I'm not a legal expert. I'm an AI expert in compliance side that now any of the legal contracts, now that the legal department asked me to sign my name there, I'm not comfortable. But that's becoming, say, if you don't empower your people to just take that, have that capacity, and then you will see different functions. Now, none of the function will feel comfortable to sign off a product, and that itself will becoming also an issue. The last part, when we, go back to the security side, and the security, the CISOs, we had quite a few conversations with CISOs where that's, in general, the agentic AI usage introducing quite a few new challenges into the, whole value chain, where that's a lot of CISOs don't have the tools. And if you don't have tools to just, a lot of time you hear the word like a human in the loop. But human in the loop doesn't really, work in many cases. If you have like, large data sets with all, and then you bring human in the loop, so what? This human cannot just review all the
You're applying the agent
yeah.
to be able to handle those large amounts of data. You can't expect the human in the loop to make specific assessments. I fully
exactly.
agree.
So there, that's the tooling. If the tooling are not available to empower CISOs, and CISO will not feel comfortable that, to really, help the company to managing the risk. And of course, a lot of, the foundational model which are being trained by others, and CISOs also lost a lot of control in that, and where that's, how if from this, dive deep into, the risk last just 1 month ago that AI 2030 is a founding member of this group that we um just published this top 10 risks for agentic AI, and those are just this is the version 1. And as you can see, even just to under the Gen AI related risk is just very new, not to see all the tools available to help to managing the risk. And then that itself also, impact greatly in the technology adoption.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, right? Because 95% of pilots fail. Nobody has really achieved ROI with their massive AI investments. So there's obviously this aggressive push of getting more value, more productivity out of this new tech, while potentially bypassing safety and security requirements, right? So you have these kind of competing forces. The other thing we spend a lot of time on, and, we help CISOs, to your point, create observability, safety, and security for agentic AI. But one big issue, for example, is fairness, right? In the past day of machine learning, banks used machine learning extensively, right, for credit approvals and all kinds of things. Even if they used a deep learning model, they in most cases still had what is called counterfactual analysis, right? I was denied for a loan. What needs to be true model for me to be approved, right? So this right to a counterfactual by a consumer or as a tool to avoid unfair treatment. This is really the big question, how to solve for that in agentic AI, right? Because to your point, it's a complete black box. It becomes, less and less transparent as we move forward in time. If you now have processes, running autonomously that decide whether people should get a mortgage or what their mortgage rate should be, or you name it, right? How do we actually test for fairness and bias, right? In sense of, for example, simulating, different ethical groups or social groups that basically set that request. The first problem is you need to know all the demographics, right? So if we run such a test, we need to know all the demographics and details of the person we are simulating for, right? So that's the banks normally have this information. Not all fintechs might have that, although with Know Your Customer, they probably do. But one of the big issues I see really is as agentic AI gets pushed towards the consumer or end customer, is how do you actually prove that it is fair and non-biased? Because as much as I do, you can ask the same question 3 times to an LLM and you get 3 different answers, right? Any perspective on that?
Yeah, definitely. And for fairness, that's in last um AI summit in New York, that's I did a workshop together with Nick Schmidt, who is another AI 2030 global fellow, and basically the fairness related or bias enter into your Gen AI product at different levels. Some of that is out of control of the company, and where that a lot of foundation model is trained by like many open source or internet data and all that. Those data itself is biased data, and where that's because our reality is biased reality. And on one hand, that's you can just correct it too much, where that's you have a world and then say that certain thing have to, and then that just go to a totally opposite direction. But if you just bring the reality into that, that obvious, we have already seen many times that some early cases where that's from the government side that's trying to provide um, uh, support to healthcare related stakeholders. Finally, the white male just are basically should be supported the most because they use the most of compared with other demography. They use the many more a lot more healthcare related services. So then naturally then the program was being created to just provide additional support to those who don't have that,
Right,
but the
but it
model
doesn't
really
examine
gave
the
it the result to the opposite.
right, and it doesn't examine or understand the reason why that demography uses the services the most. The fact that demography uses
Yeah, then they
the
just
services most, again, has a bias in society itself, which you can't capture with the model or the data, right? And I think we discussed this on the show
yeah. So
already.
then there's at the they yeah, exactly. Then there's your data can have your data can have bias, and then the foundation model which were being trained can just inherit the bias.
Yes.
And then when you just your engineer, when you design that, who don't have that social knowledge, where that they include the parameter, and then to, for example, some of the cases where that they use the postcode to allocate program and all that. So then that postcode always reflect your economic wealth, and then finally that you bring you think that's is the postcode, but actually you inherit all the bias into your performance.
Yes.
So a lot of time that the bias can enter into model at all level, and then those level are at least when we talk about all this we can identify. But then when you just go to algorithm, and then many times that's you really cannot explain if you didn't build in a way it's explainable, and there that's you just don't know what
Well,
happened there.
the moment the
And
data
that's
goes into
all.
the large language model, you lose all explainability. It's
Yeah,
really that
exactly.
straightforward.
And how can you just really be comfortable say that I can attribute to of this result of declining service to you to one factor, and I can correct it, because you don't have the answer. And if you don't have the answer, of course, that will becoming an issue for your customer and for your regulator.
Yeah, I think again, I think probably fairness and bias deserves its own show because it's a very it's probably one of the most complex topics for us to solve as we venture deeper into AI. Let me ask the final question, Xiaocheng. What keeps you awake at night?
Yeah, this is basically when I started AI 2030, and then the name of 2030 is basically think that we have the 2030s. We think that mainstream responsible AI is really time sensitive. It's urgent. if we don't do it, we don't do it fast enough, there will be irreversible consequences, and then the cost for the society to come back will be too great. Then this, the urgency you are raising with for behavior, and there that you are trying to create a movement for responsible behavior, where that the other commercial driven movement is already there, which is much bigger and larger. And then when we are at in year 2030, and then our movement is not as big, as successful compared with it, and then that consequence need to be bared by humanity, by people in So I think in general that is definitely something why we create AI 2030. We use the name 2030 in the name. Is really that urgency definitely is something that's I concern all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I share that sentiment, and that's ultimately what motivated us to go into safety and security. And I mentioned it in the last show, right? I was really, I thought it was positive, like how China disables their large language models during exam time, right? Because they really want to make sure that students do not get used to using large language models as a substitute for studying and self-study and so on and so forth. These kind of things, I think, make perfect sense. I think, to your point, they're in the interest from a societal level, mid and long term. Let's hope that we learn this lesson too, and AI 2030, I'm sure, will make a big contribution to that. With that, thank you so much for joining us today, Xiaocheng. It was really a pleasure. I learned a lot, and I hope to have you on the show again in the future.
Thank you. I also learned a lot. Always enjoy conversation with you. Thank you, really.
Today's podcast is brought to you by AIceberg. In just 5 minutes, AIceberg becomes a guardian agent that oversees all AI traffic, enforces policies, and protects your enterprise from AI breach. Learn more at aiceberg.ai.